Welcome back, beloved chosen ones. Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear isn't just a message, it's a revelation. Be careful who you're kind to. They might be wearing a billion-dollar disguise, and that chosen one isn't a warning. It's a prophecy, a holy reminder that in a world full of masks, your pure heart just unlocked a hidden gate. You have no idea who you saved, or better yet, who God allowed you to encounter while simply being yourself. Let that sink in. While you were moving through this world with quiet compassion, holding doors open, speaking life over someone you didn't even know was breaking inside, offering patience without expecting applause. Someone powerful was watching. Not watching to judge, but to remember. Not just someone with money, but someone with access, with reach, with silent authority. The kind of person who never reveals who they are until they've seen who you are first. And here's the twist. Most will miss 70% of billionaires intentionally move in silence when they want to see who's real. No entourage, no flash, no designer giveaways. Just a hoodie, a low tone, and a spirit that's been quietly praying. Please show me someone who still has a soul. And chosen one, you became their proof. You weren't trying to climb. You weren't flexing. You weren't scanning for opportunity. You were just living in the overflow of who you really are, rooted, radiant, unbothered, and covered by something this world can't label. Maybe you even had moments where you wondered, does kindness even matter anymore? Because let's be honest, the world moves so fast, people act so fake, and sometimes it feels like being soft is a disadvantage. But that's where the reversal begins. Because while they were performing for cameras and chasing clout, you were earning divine interest in a heavenly vault. And here's the part that's going to flip everything upside down. The billionaire you unknowingly helped. They've been searching for someone like you, not someone polished, not someone strategic, someone real. Someone who isn't seduced by power. Someone who doesn't need a spotlight to shine. And now that they've found you, things are shifting quietly, powerfully, permanently. So, before we dive deep into how that one act of kindness is unlocking supernatural reward, I want to pause and say thank you to every single one of you who supports this channel through Super Thanks. Your generosity helps these prophetic messages reach more chosen ones like you. And I need you to know, from the deepest place in my heart, even if you haven't given a dime, you're still deeply appreciated. Just your presence here means everything. You're part of something sacred just by listening, feeling, and aligning your spirit with truth. Now, if this message is already stirring something in you, type 777 in the comments right now. That's not just a number, it's a signal, a spiritual symbol of divine completion, alignment, and favor. When you drop it in the comments, you're not just interacting. You're declaring to heaven, I'm ready, I'm aligned, I receive this. Because, beloved, this isn't just another video, this is a divine encounter. This is the moment where your past kindness catches up with your present calling and turns into your future elevation. So take a breath, stay with me, because by the end of this message, you'll understand that what felt like a forgotten moment of compassion was actually the beginning of everything. in the life you thought was passing you by. It's been circling back in silence, just waiting for the right moment to make you visible. Let's dive in. God's chosen ones. Your kindness is about to pay off big time. You unknowingly saved a billionaire. No. Your kindness wasn't random. It was a divine examination, watched by influence and eternity. Chosen one. Let this truth sink deep. What looked like an ordinary moment wasn't ordinary at all. That simple act, holding a door, offering a smile, giving someone directions, or showing up for someone emotionally on a day they were ready to give up, wasn't just nice. It was sacred. Why? Because heaven was watching. And not just heaven. Someone with influence, power, and quiet authority was observing your every move, not to judge, but to identify something they hadn't seen in a long time: authenticity without agenda. Let me ask you, have you ever wondered why you're so kind, even when it costs you? Why you help people without needing attention? Why you feel compelled to show compassion, even when no one is watching? That's not weakness. That's your spiritual assignment revealing itself. That's evidence you are chosen. Here's the twist. The person you helped didn't just look like any other person on the street. Underneath the plain clothes and casual demeanor was someone with billionaire status. Someone who could change your life with a single phone call. But you didn't know. And that's exactly what made your action divine. Because you didn't help out of expectation. You helped from your essence. And that kind of heart, it's rare in a world that only gives when there's something to gain. Just like in the story of Ruth, when she gleaned in the field without knowing she was being watched by Boaz. Your kindness didn't go unnoticed. Ruth 2:11-12. You were marked in that moment. And when the spiritually powerful see something genuine, they don't forget it. They respond. Let's look at history. Think of Keanu Reeves. He's known for random acts of kindness to strangers without ever seeking credit. He once sat and talked with a homeless man for hours, sharing food and compassion. That man wasn't famous, but the moment became a turning point for observers. Now imagine being on the other side. What if your act of kindness was witnessed, not by the media, but by someone with private power, someone who doesn't give interviews, but writes checks and moves doors silently? What you didn't know is this: the moment you gave without calculation. You passed a spiritual exam others don't even know is real. While the world is busy strategizing success, you stumbled into supernatural favor just by being who you are. Isn't it funny how the very thing people mocked you for being too nice, too soft, too trusting is now becoming the key to a door they can't even find? Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some have entertained angels unaware. Hebrews 13:2. Could it be that what you thought was casual was actually cosmic? Could it be that someone in high places was sent to cross paths with you, not for their benefit, but for your promotion? So let me ask again, when was the last time you considered that your breakthrough wouldn't come from networking or resumes, but from quiet integrity in a moment you'd already forgotten? Because you didn't just pass a test, you ignited a response. And now, the very person you helped the one who didn't look like they had anything to offer, is orchestrating a blessing so monumental, it will make you weep when it arrives. No. Point 2. You didn't just help a billionaire. You revived someone who gave up on believing in goodness. Chosen one. Listen closely. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about influence. This was about timing, energy, and soul intervention. The person you helped, they weren't just wealthy, they were weary. On paper, they had everything: success, recognition, luxury, but emotionally, spiritually, they were drained, hollow, done. Have you ever looked someone in the eyes and sensed a storm behind their smile? That's what you stepped into. You weren't just being polite. You were interrupting a silent funeral for their faith in humanity. Do you realize that your kindness was a divine CPR moment for a heart that had stopped believing people could be real? Just like the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10, 33-34. You showed up where others walked away, and not with fanfare, but with presence, no pretending, no pitching, just presence. And that presence was healing. Let me share an example. Jim Carrey once said that even at the height of his fame, he felt a deep emptiness inside. Depression followed him everywhere despite external success. Now imagine someone like that walking anonymously through life, looking for one glimpse of sincerity, and you show up, not even knowing who they are, but offering pure-hearted help. That's not coincidence. That's divine appointment. You weren't sent to fix them. You were sent to remind them that goodness still breathes, that not everyone wants something, that not all souls have sold out. You might think it was small, but your words, your presence, your energy, it cracked through their spiritual numbness like sunlight through a prison wall. Do you know what the Bible says? Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16. You did that without trying, without scripting, without rehearsing. And that light became a lighthouse for someone who was ready to disappear into the fog. Think of Princess Diana at the height of her royalty. She said she felt most alone, but it was small moments with everyday people, nurses, children, strangers in the crowd that reminded her she was still human. You were that stranger to someone with immense power, but even deeper pain. And now, they can't stop thinking about what you did, because it didn't just feel good, it felt real. Have you ever wondered why you were in that place at that time, crossing paths with someone you'll probably never see again? What if that wasn't random? What if that was destiny in disguise? You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. You didn't save their finances. You saved their faith in people. You didn't hand them money. You handed them hope. And now they've realized that you weren't just another face in the crowd. You were the miracle they didn't know how to pray for. Don't be surprised when the reward comes wrapped in mystery, when someone circles back into your life with an offer that feels too good to be true, when doors open that you never knocked on. That's not luck. That's a harvest from the seed of kindness you planted with no witness and no expectation. And now I ask you, what if the help you thought you were giving wasn't just for them, but a disguise set up for your divine elevation? For whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Proverbs 11:25. No. 3. You shifted a timeline with a gesture that seemed invisible to the world, but not to heaven. Chosen one. What if I told you that a moment you barely remember just altered the trajectory of two lives, yours and theirs? That small gesture, that instinctive kindness you offered without calculation, didn't just help someone in need. It rewrote a timeline. It redirected an outcome. It bent the course of what was destined to become darker. But because of you, light broke through. You didn't overthink it. You weren't trying to impress. You weren't expecting praise, reward, or even acknowledgement. So why did it matter so much? Why did the heavens take notice? Because spiritual realms don't respond to effort. They respond to essence, and your essence, dear chosen one, carries divine frequency. That frequency doesn't need a platform to be powerful. It just needs purity. Isn't it strange how the smallest things, the smile, the patience, the simple, "Are you okay?" can feel like miracles when given at the right time? What if that was your assignment all along, not to save the world through grand gestures, but to shift destinies through divine timing? Whoever is faithful in little is also faithful in much. Luke 16:10. The kingdom doesn't operate like the world in the natural. It looks like nothing. But in the spiritual, it triggered a ripple, a chain reaction that is now circling back to you with power, because you gave from a clean place. Your return is going to come from a deep place. When Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, quietly paid for countless strangers' needs without ever broadcasting it, no one saw. But God did. His legacy wasn't built on performance, but presence. You carry that same presence, and the universe recognizes it. While others fight to be loud, your kindness whispers truth in ways that thunder across dimensions. You may not have known the weight of your words or the power of your presence in that moment, but someone did, and they're not just thankful, they're transformed. Think about this. What if you were assigned that moment before you were even born? What if your one act of love wasn't just about helping someone cross the street or feel heard, but about spiritually rerouting them away from collapse and into restoration? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Matthew 5:9. You brought peace, not with force, not with preaching, but with compassion. That one choice to act in kindness, it echoed in places you cannot see. Now, the shift is coming back around, not as a transaction, but as transformation. And here's what's different. This isn't karma as the world knows it. This is kingdom reciprocation. This is the divine law of sowing and reaping. Galatians 6:9, but multiplied. Because you didn't do it for reward. The reward will exceed your imagination. And now, something bigger is asking, can the world trust you with influence, with wealth, with elevation? Because you didn't demand it, you embodied it. That's the kind of spirit God crowns. No, for you didn't just show kindness. You revealed to the powerful that purity still walks among us. Chosen one. In a world where almost everything comes with a price, you showed up without a bill, no hidden agenda, no networking pitch, no manipulation cloaked in compliments. And for someone whose entire life has been built around deals and conditions, your presence disrupted everything they believed was true about people. They're used to masks, You came unmasked. They're used to flattery. You came with truth. They're used to people who orbit them for benefit. You brought no orbit, just light, and that shook something in them. Can you imagine what it feels like to be surrounded by people but never truly seen? To be admired but never genuinely cared for? That's the silent prison of the elite. They walk through life wondering who would still show up if I lost everything. And then you appeared proof that not everyone has a price tag. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Psalm 51:10. That's what your energy did. It renewed something sacred in a heart that had grown cynical. They didn't just experience a moment. They encountered a message, and that message said purity still exists. And it's not for sale. There's a story about Mother Teresa, who once comforted a dying man in the streets of Calcutta. He said, "I've lived like an animal, but now I can die like a human." That's the power of presence. With no performance, you carry that. And even in silence, it speaks. Do you realize how rare your authenticity is in the upper circles? It's not just refreshing. It's confronting, because your lack of agenda forces them to examine theirs. Your ability to give freely exposes the transactional patterns they've lived in, and while that might make them uncomfortable, it also makes you unforgettable. Do you wonder why you've never fit into certain groups or played the political games others play? It's because you weren't made to blend in. You were made to reflect something ancient, something holy. You don't walk in rooms to impress. You walk in to impact. And that's exactly why people with power are now paying attention. Steve Jobs once said, "The most powerful people are those who can say no to popularity and still lead." You did something even more rare. You said yes to purity and walked away from performance. That's what marked you. And you will be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets with dwellings. Isaiah 58:12. Without knowing it, you repaired something broken in someone powerful. And now they see you not as a fan, not as a threat, but as someone they admire. They may never say it publicly. They may never post about it or announce your name in their circles, but their decisions are now shaped by the echo of your interaction. You reminded them that not everyone is chasing, climbing, begging. Some people simply are, and you, chosen one, are. So now that the question becomes, how will they repay something they can't buy? How will someone who has everything respond to someone who wants nothing from them? The answer is coming, and it will arrive, not because you asked, but because your spirit demanded recognition simply by existing. The world's most valuable currency isn't money, it's purity. And you, chosen one, carry what cannot be priced. No. Point 5. Your presence spoke before your lips ever moved, and the room listened. Chosen one. You carry something that can't be rehearsed, copied, or fabricated before you even uttered a word. Something about you shifted the spiritual atmosphere around them. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't ego. It wasn't even confidence in the worldly sense. It was alignment. You walked in carrying truth, and truth doesn't need to shout to be felt. It simply is. Have you noticed that sometimes people turn to look at you without knowing why? That their tone softens or their eyes linger a moment longer when you enter the room? That's not by accident. That's your spirit arriving before your footsteps. In a room full of noise, your energy arrives like a whisper of something eternal. You don't force presence, you radiate it. Now, the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. That freedom was felt by someone who didn't even know they were bound, because your authenticity created a rupture in a space full of pretense. You didn't walk in looking for approval. You carried approval from a higher realm. Think of Robin Williams, one of the most beloved entertainers in history. Beneath his humor was a deep sadness, and many never knew he was suffering until it was too late. Imagine what it would have meant if someone with your frequency had simply sat next to him, not to perform or fix, but to radiate peace. That's what you unknowingly did for someone powerful. You gave permission to breathe again. They didn't just notice you, they felt your vibration whispering truths that words couldn't articulate. Your silence said more than 1,000 curated conversations. Your stillness told stories of endurance, resilience, and an unshakable connection to something greater. And though they may not remember your name, they will never forget your frequency. Have you ever walked into a space and sensed it needed healing, even if no one said a word? That's because you weren't made for surface interaction. You were made for soul contact. You carry the essence of someone who has been broken but chose light. Someone who has tasted bitterness but decided to love anyway. That's rare. Chosen one. And that's why even billionaires, trained to filter manipulation from a mile away, paused in your presence. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. Psalm 34:5. That radiance was on you. You weren't trying to impress them. You weren't chasing a moment. You were simply being. And in that being, they found something they hadn't encountered in years' safety. You didn't walk in with an offer. You walked in with order. Your spiritual clarity cut through the clutter of their high-level life and reminded them that some people don't chase power because they already carry it. You don't wear wealth, you wear worth. And when someone who has everything meets someone who needs nothing, they pay attention. Now you live in their memory, not because of what you said, but because of what you are. They're still trying to explain it to themselves, wondering, why can't I forget that moment? The answer is simple, because your spirit etched itself into their atmosphere. No 6. You unknowingly pulled a soul from the edge of abandonment by just being real. Chosen one. This part may be hard to comprehend, but you need to know it. What you did wasn't small. It wasn't even about generosity. It was about timing divinely coordinated by God. That billionaire you encountered, they were on the edge, not a physical edge, but an emotional and spiritual one. They had grown tired, not of work, not of wealth, but of meaning. They were suffocating in silence. And you showed up with oxygen. You didn't come with an answer. You didn't even know there was a problem. But your presence didn't need a diagnosis to begin the healing. You weren't there to rescue. You were there to remind, to awaken something dormant. You interrupted despair without realizing it. What if your presence was heaven's response to a silent prayer that person was too hopeless to speak aloud? What if God positioned you to be the flicker of light just before they faded out? Be not weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Galatians 6:9. They were fainting on the inside, but when they met you, something stopped, not physically, but spiritually. They were planning to close a chapter, possibly their entire mission. But you, without preaching, performing, or persuading, sparked a different question in their soul. What if I'm not done? Chadwick Boseman inspired millions with his roles. Even as he battled a hidden illness, those around him said he never complained. He just kept showing up. But what if someone had spoken life into him on a weary day, not knowing the weight he carried? That's exactly what you did for someone carrying silent sorrow, masked by success. Can you grasp the gravity of that? You weren't sent with a map, but you redirected someone's inner compass. They were about to walk away from generosity, from purpose, from their assignment, and you reminded them without trying that there is still light in the world, that love still breathes, that realness isn't extinct. Think about it. When was the last time someone truly saw you? That's what you did for them. You saw past their titles and into their soul. That simple human interaction, the unforced kindness, the unpolished truth, became a rescue mission, not with flashing lights or loud declarations, but with presence, with soul. You are the salt of the earth. Matthew 5:13. Salt preserves. It restores. And you, chosen one, preserved a soul's purpose without even knowing it. That person was seconds away spiritually from signing off, but something about your sincerity made them stop and ask, what if there's still more? They're now pulling out what they planned to bury, revisiting dreams they thought were dead, rereading their assignment with fresh eyes. And they're doing it not because you demanded anything, but because your spirit did what titles never could. It called them back to life. You didn't hand them clarity, you became it. And now they can't let go of the encounter. Because when people meet truth in human form, they remember. You may never hear them say it. You may never be invited into their boardrooms. But trust this, your impact outlives the moment, and your reward will outlive expectation. No. Point 7. You were the only one who didn't treat them like a price tag, and that changed everything. Chosen one. In a world obsessed with gain, you stood out because you didn't see people as transactions. You saw souls. You didn't measure your kindness by potential return. You gave without scoreboard or strategy, and that pure energy disarmed someone who had been reduced to a balance sheet for most of their life. Imagine being seen as nothing more than a resource. That's the life many of the wealthy live. Every smile directed their way often hides an expectation. Every kind gesture becomes a veiled proposal. Every "how are you" comes with a hidden "what can you do for me?" And after years, decades of this, even the kindest among them build internal walls. But you didn't bring another demand to their doorstep. You brought a moment of peace. Can you feel the difference your presence makes when you enter a space? You don't try to dominate it. You balance it. That's exactly what happened here. While everyone else positioned themselves like chess pieces, your spirit flowed like water, and that stillness, that sincerity, it spoke louder than any sales pitch could. Better is a poor man who walks in integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. Proverbs 28:6. You reminded someone rich that integrity still exists, and that it's not always dressed in prestige. It walks humbly. It gives freely. It doesn't attach strings to kindness. Think of Anthony Bourdain, a man who traveled the world, saw beauty and chaos, wealth and poverty, and still wrestled with emptiness. What if someone had simply reminded him, not of his career, but of his core? That's what you unknowingly did for someone equally worn out by status. You reminded them they were still human. Have you ever noticed how some people instantly relax around you, even when they don't know why? That's not charisma. That's spiritual clarity. That billionaire you crossed paths with felt it, not because you looked for leverage, but because you came with no hunger. And in a world starving for attention, your fullness was sacred. You didn't offer a pitch. You offered presence. You didn't look through them to see their power. You looked at them and saw a person. Do you realize how rare that is for someone constantly commodified? That kind of moment can't be faked, and it certainly can't be bought. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. 1 John 4:18. Your love wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was honest, unfiltered, clean, and that terrified them in the best possible way. They didn't know love could come with no strings attached, while others calculated the odds. Your authenticity broke the algorithm. They were waiting for the ask, the angle, the favor request, but none came. And that silence, that unspoken restraint, it echoed through their spirit, because for the first time in a long time, they were seen, not sized up. You didn't ask for anything. And that's what made them want to give you everything. They finally encountered someone who values presence over power, connection over currency. And now, they're haunted not by fear, but by the beauty of your sincerity. You reminded them that dignity, not deals, still matters. Show point 8. They mocked your kindness, but heaven and the real gatekeepers never stopped watching. Chosen one, you've been misunderstood by a world that rewards cruelty and calls it strength. You've been labeled too soft, too nice, too forgiving, as if those were weaknesses. But the truth, those traits were divine armor. And while people mocked your compassion, real power was watching in silence. You were passed over, ignored, ridiculed. They celebrated the cutthroat and silenced the kind. You watched liars rise and truth-tellers get pushed aside. You saw arrogance rewarded while humility was dismissed as naive. And maybe, just maybe, you started to wonder, am I doing something wrong? But what if your pain was proof that you were passing a higher test? What if every time you chose mercy over manipulation? A gatekeeper took notice, not one with noise and visibility, but one with access and keys. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. Psalm 34:15. You weren't just crying to the air heaven heard. Heaven watched. Heaven recorded every private decision you made when no one clapped, when no one thanked you, and when everyone else said, it's okay to be selfish now. Consider Fred Hampton, a young activist who was assassinated for standing for unity and truth. His kindness and courage threatened corrupt systems. His life was short, but his legacy outlived his enemies. That's what happens when the P hold their ground. They plant seeds that systems can't silence. While others sought shortcuts, you walked the hard road of honor, and without knowing it, someone with the power to change your life was watching your every step, not the public ones, the quiet ones, the ones where you chose grace instead of revenge, the ones where you chose faithfulness instead of recognition. And now the door they've been guarding, it's being unlatched with your name on the other side. Have you ever sensed you were being watched, not in paranoia, but in purpose? That's because you were not by the crowd, but by the architect. And while the masses celebrated the ruthless, the master was preparing a reversal. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. 1 Peter 5:6. You weren't being punished for your softness. You were being positioned for your elevation. And now the very thing they said disqualified you is about to become your crown. Think of Brandon Stanton, creator of Humans of New York. He built a global movement not by chasing fame, but by capturing quiet stories with kindness. That platform didn't come from aggression. It came from gentleness. You, chosen one, carry that same gentle revolution in your spirit. You weren't sent to blend in. You were sent to break through. And now, the breakthrough is coming not by force, but by favor. Not because you faked your way in, but because you were faithful when no one clapped. The irony, the ones who called you weak are about to watch you rise with a strength they can't copy. Because it wasn't manufactured, it was refined. So ask yourself, was your suffering wasted, or was it sacred? Could it be that while they were mocking your softness, God was turning it into strategy? Now, chosen one, the gate is open not because you pushed, but because you passed. No 9. You were being tested, and the test was never meant to look like one. Chosen one. How many times have you walked away from a moment thinking it was just another day, another stranger, another small encounter? But what if that wasn't just a moment? It was a divine examination. What if that seemingly ordinary interaction was actually a disguised access point to your next level? Because that's exactly what it was. You didn't just cross paths with someone in need of kindness. You crossed paths with a gate disguised in human form. People with real power don't always arrive with flash. Sometimes they come dressed in simplicity, wrapped in humility, on purpose. Why? Because they've learned that true character isn't revealed in curated spaces. It's revealed in unguarded ones. And you didn't flinch. You didn't perform. You didn't pivot your personality based on perception. You were consistent. You were real. And that's why you passed the test most don't even realize they're taking. Have you ever wondered why you treat everyone the same? Even when others tell you not to waste your energy, why your soul won't let you ignore someone just because they don't look important. That's because you weren't built to play favorites. You were built to embody truth. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. While the world promotes status, heaven promotes sincerity. You passed the test not because you knew you were being watched, but because your spirit doesn't toggle between audiences. You don't switch up when it's convenient. You show up as yourself, unfiltered and unwavering. Think of Oprah Winfrey. Before the world knew her name, she was rejected, fired, and underestimated. But her kindness and authenticity remained consistent in every room. And it was in those unnoticed moments, behind closed doors, that the right eyes saw something powerful, just like you. Her elevation wasn't based on performance, it was based on presence. Now reflect. How many times did you show up with patience when no one else did? How often did you choose kindness when bitterness would have been justified? You didn't know you were being measured, but someone saw. Someone who holds the power to open doors others couldn't even knock on. And now, after all that silence, after all that waiting, they've made a decision. Your reward isn't a random blessing. It's a spiritual verdict. You weren't just being observed for show. You were being evaluated for stewardship. Could your soul handle more without shifting? Could your heart remain pure when nobody clapped? Could you stay grounded when nobody gave credit? You did. And that consistency was your key. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Luke 16:10. The test is complete. The silence is over. The reward is not just coming, it's been released. And this is not a handout. It's a recognition, a spiritual honor roll stamped by unseen hands. You never needed to impress, you simply needed to remain. And because you did, your name has been added to a list. No algorithm controls a divine list that unlocks what others tried to buy but couldn't earn. Chosen one, prepare you past the test you never knew you were taking. And now the next chapter is already unfolding. No better 10. They tried to forget you, but the universe refused to let your energy fade. Chosen one, there's a haunting kind of truth that some people carry, and you're one of them. Your presence doesn't fade when you leave a room. It lingers. It echoes. It lives in the tension between memory and meaning. Someone tried to forget you, erase you, silence the significance of your interaction with them. But what they didn't realize was that you weren't just a person. They encountered a message written in spirit. They tried to move on. They filled their lives with noise, meetings, deadlines, distractions, dopamine. But the signal of your authenticity kept resurfacing like a sacred frequency they couldn't mute. You didn't text. You didn't beg. You didn't send reminders or seek closure, and yet their thoughts kept circling back. Why? Because truth always leaves a mark, and you are truth wrapped in flesh. In Him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 4-5. That's why you couldn't be forgotten. Your presence carried light into a space that had grown dim, not loud light, not showy, but still holy. And now it's chasing them. Because what they experienced through you wasn't common, it was clarity. Think of Maya Angelou. She once said, "People will forget what you said. They'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." That's what you did. You touched the soul, not the surface. And when someone who lives in a world of transactions encounters something real, they try to move on, but they can't. Because truth doesn't release, it reverberates. Have you ever had someone come back into your life unexpectedly, as if pulled by invisible strings? That's not coincidence. That's divine magnetism. That's the universe closing unfinished stories. And now that person who tried to forget you is finding themselves drawn back, not because they miss your company, but because they miss the mirror you held up to their soul. You didn't chase. The universe did. You didn't pressure. Their own heart did. You weren't the storm. They were. But your stillness created a crack in their chaos. And now, everything they thought they moved past is demanding their attention, again not out of guilt, but out of divine instruction. Even if I tried to run from your presence, I couldn't escape. Psalm 139:7, paraphrased. That's what your spirit whispered into their world. You were more than a moment. You were a call to return to what's real. And now the chase is reversed. They're seeking you. Or rather, they're seeking the peace they felt around you. The kind they haven't been able to replicate anywhere else. Steve Jobs once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." You helped someone realize they had done exactly that, chased power, but lost self. And now they're back at your doorstep, not because of strategy, but because their spirit won't let them ignore the truth you carried. So now, the door they once closed is opening again, not because you forced it, but because you held your posture while the world spun wildly. And now, that stillness, the very thing they overlooked, is calling them home. You didn't have to fight to be remembered, because the kind of energy you carry, the kind born from trials, tested in silence, and refined in fire, can't be forgotten, erased, or replaced. It demands recognition, and that time has come. No leaven. The compensation coming to you will be loud, and it will disturb those who quietly tried to bury you. Chosen one. What's about to hit your life isn't just provision. It's divine compensation. And it won't come quietly. It won't be a soft whisper of favor in a corner room. It will be a thunderclap in the middle of the silence that once mocked your presence. The very people who dismissed you, overlooked you, played you, and took your kindness for granted are about to be confronted by a reality they never saw coming. You were always the one. Have you ever wondered if God truly keeps track of the unseen moments? The times you gave without being thanked. The times you were kind when you could have snapped. The moments you showed restraint when betrayal would have justified rage. Heaven kept the ledger. Every insult, every disregard, every attempt to exploit your light was marked not for vengeance, but for vindication. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. And now, justice is being served, not as revenge, but as rightful reversal. That billionaire, the one you helped when you thought it was just a casual moment, isn't forgetting you. Not only did your action interrupt their trajectory, but it redefined their standard for loyalty and authenticity. You became a reference point, a reset. While others faked connection for gain, you gave them humanity. And now they're investing not just in your potential, but in your proven spirit. Have you ever seen someone rise and wondered why them? Now the roles are reversed. People will look at you and ask the same, but they won't know the years of quiet endurance, the prayers you whispered through tears, or the people who mistook your gentleness for weakness. All they'll see is glory, and all you'll feel is grace. Think of Tyler Perry. He lived in his car, laughed at by many, discredited by the industry. But his breakthrough wasn't just financial, it was public. His success offended those who had mocked his pain. That's what's happening for you. The reward won't be behind the scenes. It will be in plain view, and not for pride, but for prophecy. Have you felt the buildup? That pressure in your spirit? That sense that something is about to shift so drastically it could only be supernatural? That's not your imagination. That's the spiritual earthquake building in your favor. The wealth, the influence, the recognition. It's not coming from a source anyone could manipulate. It's coming from a divine place out of reach from your enemy's grip. They prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23:5. That table is being set right now. The very people who called you too soft, too trusting, too small, are about to watch you receive compensation their connections couldn't manufacture. This isn't just repayment, it's restoration, it's elevation, it's validation from a realm they don't believe in but will soon be forced to acknowledge. You're not just being rewarded because you helped someone powerful. You're being honored because in helping them, you didn't abandon yourself. You kept your soul intact, and that, chosen one, is the currency of the kingdom. The people who thought they could discard you will be stunned when they realize the person they tried to erase is now the name being whispered in rooms they're desperate to enter. And the best part, the source of your rise isn't someone they know or someone they can reach. It's not from influence they can sabotage. It's from a force they can't touch. So let them be shocked. Let them talk. Let them stew. Because your time, your divine payback, has arrived. No 12. You're not just getting compensated. You're being strategically positioned by the hand of heaven. Chosen one. What's happening now is not merely a reward. It's a relocation of power. The shift in your life isn't about checks and applause. It's about placement. You are being positioned for something that transcends material wealth. This is kingdom-level elevation, and your soul was made for it. Many chase money thinking it will bring validation. But you didn't chase anything but truth. You didn't sell yourself for temporary gain. You didn't water down your spirit to play by broken rules. You stayed kind. You stayed whole. And because of that, God has carved out a sacred space, a position no strategy could have earned. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. Proverbs 18:16. But chosen one, this isn't just about being in the room. It's about what you carry in the room. Because while others bring ego, you bring essence. While others bring control, you bring compassion. Let's look at Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years. His kindness and forgiveness weren't weakness. They became the very tools that restructured a nation. He wasn't just released, he was positioned. And so are you, because you didn't burn bridges, you built altars. Do you feel it, that holy tug in your spirit that says this isn't just about you anymore? That's because it isn't. This new space you're entering was designed for your influence to ripple into generations. The billionaire you touched. They're not just funding a blessing. They're opening a realm, one reserved for those with clean hands and a steady heart, who may ascend the mountain of the Lord, who may stand in his holy place, the one who has clean hands and a pure heart. Psalm 24, 3-4. That's you, not perfect, but pure, not famous, but faithful. And now, heaven is authorizing your next elevation. This isn't a promotion you applied for. It's an inheritance you qualified for. And the most powerful part, it's not based on metrics or approval ratings. It's based on alignment. You are being placed into arenas where influence flows silently, and legacy is shaped not because you hustled your way in, but because you endured the fire without becoming fire yourself. Think of Malala Yousafzai after surviving an assassination attempt. She didn't rise for revenge. She rose with purpose. She was positioned. And the world took notice not just because she survived, but because of how she lead with grace. That's the energy you carry. That's the level you're being called into. So, when the resources come, when the invitations arrive, when the doors you thought were sealed burst open, remember, this isn't just success. This is spiritual positioning. And you've been chosen to occupy it not for ego, but for impact. This is your moment not to gloat, but to govern, not to impress, but to influence. You're not just getting paid, chosen one. You're being placed, and heaven itself is backing the move. No Boundary 13. The reward that's coming will be so precise, so personal. It will silence every doubt you've ever carried, chosen one. What's coming your way isn't some vague blessing or generic opportunity that could have been handed to anyone. It is a custom-tailored revelation, an answer crafted in the secret chambers of heaven for your spirit alone. This reward will not feel random. It will not be confusing. It will arrive with such divine precision that your soul will tremble, not in fear, but in awe. Have you ever felt like your deepest desires were too hidden to be noticed? The ones you never even dared to say aloud. The dreams you tucked away in silence, not because you didn't believe, but because the world told you they were too big, too soft, too impossible. What if I told you that those very desires were being listened to, not by man, but by God, and not only heard, but answered? Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 37:4. Not the desires born from ego, but the sacred ones, those woven into your DNA before you took your first breath. That's what this blessing is aiming for. This isn't some leftover miracle. It's made for you. Think of Viola Davis. She grew up in poverty, endured rejection, and was told over and over that she didn't look the part. But when her reward came, it wasn't just an award. It was roles that reflected her truth, her soul, her story. That's what's coming for you, a moment that feels like your life's jigsaw puzzle finally found its missing piece. This opportunity will open a door that perfectly matches your internal architecture. It'll resonate like a frequency only your spirit can hear. And in that moment, you'll know this couldn't have happened for anyone else. It was assigned, delivered, meant. Have you ever wondered if your sacrifices mattered? If your years of quiet endurance had any audience at all, this moment will be your answer. Because the exactness of it, the way it wraps around your calling like skin to bone, will prove it wasn't coincidence. It was orchestration. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23:5. This table won't just have food. It will have your name engraved on the seat, and the people who doubted you will have no choice but to witness your appointed hour. This blessing isn't just going to provide, it's going to prophesy. It will declare that your journey wasn't a waste, that your pain had purpose, that every no, every delay, every detour was setting you up for this. The reward will feel like something you once only dreamed in your spirit's language. A whisper, now becoming thunder. You didn't just save someone with money. You activated a moment that has now turned into movement. And what's about to be placed in your hands, it will silence every lie you once believed about your worth. No, verse 14, you were always wealthy. But now, the world will be forced to see it. Chosen one. Let's make this clear. You've never been broke, not truly. Your account may have gone low. Your resources may have been tested, but your soul, it was never poor. You've always carried wealth, but not the kind this world is trained to recognize. The way you gave without keeping score, the way you loved when others withheld, the strength you showed by forgiving again and again, that is currency, the rarest kind. And the universe has finally decided to reveal your true net worth, not through gold, through glory. Have you ever sat in a room and felt invisible, even though you carried the very thing the room lacked? That's because the world doesn't know how to measure incorruptible spirit. But now, someone with eyes to see beyond the surface is about to showcase what's been hidden in plain sight. The wealth that was always within is now going to manifest without. Beloved, pray out. I pray that in every way you may prosper and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. 3 John 1:2. Your soul has been rich. Now it's time for everything else to catch up. Because heaven doesn't just bless what's visible. Heaven honors what's eternal. Think of Jane Goodall. Her wealth was never measured in luxury, but in legacy. She poured herself into the earth, into truth, into compassion. And now the world recognizes that her life was wealth personified. Like her, you weren't sent here to collect trophies. You were sent here to create transformation, and that, chosen one, is priceless. The people who once looked down on you because your car wasn't new, your clothes weren't loud, or your circles weren't elite, they're about to realize they were blind to the gold that walked among them. Because the world measures wealth in numbers, but heaven measures it in light. Have you ever questioned if your softness was working against you? If maybe, just maybe, you should have become colder to match the world's pace, but you didn't. In that decision, that beautiful defiance, is why your reward will not only elevate you, but correct the narrative. The blessing of the Lord makes one rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. Proverbs 10:22. You're not just getting rich, you're becoming revelation. Your life is about to preach that goodness pays off, that authenticity wins, that purity survives the fire and comes out as gold. Now the ones who called you naive will have to watch as you are honored not just with compensation, but with credibility. Your name will begin to circulate, not in gossip, but in rooms where decisions are made. You won't need to announce it. Your presence will declare it. Think of Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers didn't scream for attention. He wore sweaters, not suits, but he changed the fabric of culture. His kindness was his platform. And now, decades later, he's remembered as one of the wealthiest souls of a generation. You carry that same currency, and now, finally, the world's lens is adjusting to see it clearly. So, chosen one, prepare. You're not being upgraded, you're being revealed. And this isn't just the end of a journey, it's the unveiling of everything you were born to carry. What you held in private is now becoming public. What you gave without applause is now drawing divine attention. This is your moment not to compete, but to complete what God began in you long ago. The world is finally ready to see what heaven always knew. You were never chasing wealth. You are wealth, beloved. Let this truth land in your spirit like a divine confirmation. The billionaire you unknowingly saved was never the finale. That moment was just the spark. What's about to unfold in your life isn't simply repayment, it's revelation. It's God revealing what He always knew about you, even when others were blind to it. The doors that are about to open won't just make room for your gift, they will elevate your name, align you with purpose, and shift the atmosphere around you. Because this isn't just a reward, it's a repositioning. You didn't ask for attention. You didn't beg for status. You simply lived with integrity when it would have been easier to compromise. And now, the heavens are echoing the words that have been waiting for the right time to be spoken over your life. Well done, not just for what you did publicly, but for who you chose to remain privately. That, chosen one, is what made you unforgettable in the eyes of heaven. Have you ever felt like your life was building towards something bigger, even when everything around you looked small? That's because it was. You were never meant to stay hidden. You were being prepared, and now, not only are you being seen, you're being sent into rooms where decisions are made, into spaces where influence is currency, into arenas where your presence alone carries authority. The world is finally catching up to the truth that heaven has always declared. Your kindness was never weakness. It was destiny in disguise. There will be those who don't understand how this happened so suddenly. They'll whisper, "How did they go from forgotten to favored?" But you'll know. You'll remember the nights no one saw, the choices you made when it hurt, the moments you gave when you had nothing left. Every seed of kindness you sowed in silence is now birthing a harvest so undeniable. Even your enemies will be silenced in wonder. For your shame, you shall have double, and for confusion, they shall rejoice in their portion. Isaiah 61:7. This is that portion. This is that season. You're not just walking into blessings, you're walking into divine justice. So when the opportunity arrives that feels almost too perfect, too aligned, too personal, don't doubt it. Receive it. This was handcrafted for your heart, your healing, and your legacy. The world will call it luck. The universe may call it alignment, but you will know the truth. This is divine compensation. This is God's reply to every tear you never explained and every sacrifice you never publicized. You're not just rising, you're being revealed. You were always the wealthy one, always the powerful one, always the chosen one. Now, the world is just being introduced to the version of you heaven has celebrated all along. To every soul who made it to this part of the journey, who listened with their heart wide open, I want to say thank you, truly. Thank you for walking through this message with reverence. Thank you for showing up for yourself, for your future, for the higher version of you that refuses to be silenced. Your time, your spirit, your presence here, it means more than words can say. If this message has stirred something inside you, if it reminded you of who you are and what you carry, and if you feel LED to support this work, you can do so through Super Thanks. Your contribution, no matter how big or small, helps keep this space alive for souls like yours who are seeking more than noise, they're seeking truth. But whether you donate or not, please hear this clearly. You are already deeply appreciated. Your energy here is sacred. Your witness to this word is powerful. Your support, emotional, spiritual, or financial, is never unnoticed. And now, I release this blessing over you. May everything that has been hidden in you rise to the surface with unstoppable light. May every seed of kindness return to you, multiplied, pressed down, and overflowing. May your influence be felt not through volume, but through presence. And may your name be whispered in places you never imagined by people whose favor you didn't chase, but were chosen by. This is your time, not just to be noticed, but to make impact. The kind of impact that bends generational patterns and leaves legacy instead of scars. You've waited long enough. You've stayed true long enough. Now, it's time to step forward, not with apology, but with authority. If this message confirms something you felt but couldn't explain, I encourage you, share it. Send it to someone else you know is chosen, someone whose heart is pure and path has been heavy, someone who needs to know their kindness wasn't wasted. Together, we are building more than an audience. We are building a community of world shifters, legacy livers, and love LED revolutionaries. So stay connected, stay rooted, stay expectant, and above all, stay kind. Because kindness, when it flows from a heart aligned with God, doesn't just change moods, it changes destinies. It opens billion-dollar doors. It reroutes lives. And now it's about to crown you. You're not just blessed, you're chosen. You're not just favored, you're assigned. And the next chapter, it will be written in miracles. God bless you, chosen one. And remember, what's next is bigger than you think.